The Palworld lawsuit is not what you think.
Okay, listen up, everyone. Today's story actually does matter a lot. Nintendo are suing Palworld, but it's not for the reason that you think. It's not because designs are too similar. It is cold-blooded business. And that is a quote. It's not just the opinion of me, some Westerner who doesn't understand Japanese law trying to pump up the story for you. It's what Serkan Toto called it. Cold-blooded business. Now, he runs a game consultancy firm in Japan. He is absolutely seen as a regional expert. He knows what he's talking about, and worse, for Palworld developer Pocket Pair, he thinks Nintendo will win. Now, I get it.
Nintendo, keep in mind, Nintendo has a 100% success rate of winning litigation that they have initiated.
I think I don't play creature collectors. This doesn't matter to me. Well, the bad news is it does. This is a direct threat to what we all enjoy. It is a threat against the entire industry. And if past predicts future, Nintendo will almost certainly win because their domestic litigation track record is legendary. Now, I'm sure you know the phrase, if you come for the king, you better not miss.
There it is.
404 Media spoke to Dr. Toto, and it turns out, to his memory, Nintendo have never lost a litigation that they started. So yes,
man, that's scary. That's really fucking scary.
their lawyers are big brains with big wallets.
He watches
you.
you?
Up to beat them with today's sponsor. We're going to help you transform doom scrolling into actual lasting satisfaction. They're brilliant.org/Bellular News, who actually helped me benefit from my tech rather than be hijacked by it.
I know.
They make learning interactive and fun, where you basically learn by doing across thousands of interactive lessons in maths and data analysis, programming and AI. And it's all on their site and app that is gorgeously designed where everything's interactive, which means you actually feel the concepts that you're learning. This method is proven to be 6 times more effective than lecture videos, which certainly does match my experience doing lectures where I don't really remember anything, but I do remember things that I've done. Now, I love Brilliant because understanding STEM topics is vocationally useful, but also life useful. Sharp problem solving and analytical skills are important in a world that is getting more full of data, more chaotic. As an example, take their data pathway. They just relaunched...
It's actually crazy how many people don't have any competency on reading a basic graph. Like, I didn't really realize this until I remember we did Schooled, and I was, like, seeing people look at graphs, and it was like, now I understand why the biggest problem in America is transgenders and not the national deficit or, like, inflation. Now I understand it. Because nobody knows what this graph means. Yeah.
It's packed full of real-world data from Airbnb, Spotify, Starbucks, and other big businesses where you'll learn how to parse, visualize, and understand data. Of course, your professional life will thank you, and these skills, like, say, deeply understanding probability, can help you stay grounded in the world. So, you can turn that doom scrolling into a daily learning habit at brilliant.org/Bellular News. There, you will get a 30-day free trial and 20% off an annual plan. I highly recommend them. Seriously, it is so much better than just scrolling around your phone achieving nothing. We first caught whiffs of this months back whenever the Pokemon Company finally responded, and edited for brevity, this is what they said. We have received many inquiries regarding another company's game released in January 2024. We haven't granted permission to use our IP or assets and intend to investigate and take appropriate measures. So they said, we're looking into it. And
yeah, Pokemon basically said, Palworld, we see you.
Certainly a little bit chilling. And reading that, we're all thinking the same thing. Did Pocket Pair yoink something? Did they rip a model from Pokemon? Did they kit bash using models from Pokemon? Allegations to that effect were all over the internet.
Abso-fucking-lutely they did, without a shadow of a doubt. They copied this shit. It's nearly 1-for-1, and the thing is that they're not even getting sued for that. You would have to be absolutely out of your fucking mind to think that Anubis and Lucario are not the exact same thing. I'm sorry. Come on.
Now, VGC actually spoke to 2 AAA 3D modelers whenever the Pokemon Company released their statement, and they basically said, you cannot in any way, and this is a quote, accidentally get the same proportions on multiple models from another game without ripping the models, or at the very least, tracing them meticulously first.
It was proven that this was not the case, but the point still stands. Because for a while, there was like an idea that somebody had a smoking gun that proved that Palworld stole the models, that proof was then disproven. So all you can do is look at the two of them. Anubis is an Egyptian god. Yeah, it's the god of death. I know that. Fucking obviously. It's the name that they changed. It's the character model, not the name. Everybody fucking knows that.
One of those people said they would stand behind their words as an expert witness in court, but more relevant to today, VGC also ran it by an IP lawyer. The IP lawyer said, if proven, that would be a smoking gun. Today's statement from Nintendo and the Pokemon Company is not what we expected because it doesn't talk about copyright infringement for protected designs. Rather, it's about patent infringement. And remember, this is cold. This is business. This is about defeating your foe. So if the spirit of your complaint, say designs being too similar, is a weaker legal argument, well, then your extremely expensive lawyers will not make that argument, but they will, of course, try to achieve your goals. And remember, Nintendo's lawyers are
it's kind of like a good example of like a parallel to this is that Al Capone didn't go to jail for being in the mafia or for killing people. He went to jail for tax evasion. So I think Nintendo's trying to look and try to take that same, it's a bit of a metaphor, right? Take that same approach.
Of the best in the entire industry. And they've done easy things like knocking out these Pokemon clones from China, but more recently, we have a scary story. They won $30 million suing Colopool over patent infringement. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here. But what's spooky is the specific patents and how that litigation went down. And this is almost certainly, I believe, what they'll do to Pocket Pair because it seems like it's their playbook. They try to get them in patents. Here's a few of them. Quote, the special technology used to operate a joystick over a touch panel. Another one is a confirmation screen appearing whenever you resume a game from sleep mode.
What the fuck?
Dr. Toto summed up the others. He said this, quote, and they have 5 other ones, including one for isometric, pseudo, 3D games. Where
the character is hidden behind a tree, the game forms a shadow, so you have kind of a sense of where the character is, even though you don't see the character clearly. Nintendo has a patent on that, and this game uses that technology. Oh my god. Nintendo should patent gravity in games too, before somebody else does. This is a good idea.
Character is hidden behind a tree. The game forms a shadow, so you have.
Why don't they just patent trees? Yeah, I mean, like, let's cut out the middleman. Let's just patent a tree itself. You see, there's a tree in another game. Well, okay, well, fucking shut them down.
Sense for where your character is, even though you don't see your character clearly.
Terrence Howard level patents.
World of Warcraft just added that. So many games have that. You're playing an isometric game, you walk behind a tall building, but you still see where your character is. Yet, that is something Nintendo actually used. They do hold those patents, but many would say those patents are so broad and industry standard that they're invalid. And that actually is a defense in Japan. It's one that, in this case, the defendant made. They said that Nintendo's patents lacked novelty and inventiveness and therefore are invalid, so broad that they're essentially meaningless. And this is where the story gets chilling. Nintendo didn't have to win. Colopool ended up having to settle. The settlement is, of course, a mutual agreement between both companies to come to terms and stop the legal...
Nintendo's going to try to bleed them out, basically. The issue, I think, with Palworld is that Palworld made so much money. And I think that if, like, because they are on Game Pass, etc., I think that Palworld is in a much stronger position to fight against this. The scummy fucks. Yeah, exactly. They can afford to fight them. Yeah. Nintendo's huge, though.
Make no mistake, Nintendo were not the losers here, and it's worse than that. The settlement involves Colopool having to pay Nintendo a licensing fee for those patents.
Insane.
Now, by the law of the land, Nintendo did not prove their patent claim, as far as my understanding goes. Yet, even though they didn't prove that legally, they successfully strong-armed their target into number 1, giving up a lot of money, and number 2, into a licensing deal for those patents that many would argue are invalid by the law of Japan. But again, that argument did not get fully borne out.
See, I actually am really glad Bellior talked about this. I didn't know this. So there actually isn't a necessary precedent for this specific thing happening. That's good to hear. Maybe they're expecting Palworld to do the same thing.
Court, we don't have a legal decision.
Actually milking them?
The thing.
Yeah, they are.
The legal system is supposed to uphold the law, but here, the system was the weapon, and the law didn't exactly matter. Palworld then. Nintendo's filings are not public. That means we do not know what patents they're using. The people over at Pocket Pair also don't know. But here's a Nintendo example that Stephen Totillo found in the US Patent Office, and there is crossover between the US and Japanese patent offices. You can see this amazing art. Throwing an item to catch a monster. We see some WikiHow tier art of it. We see a flowchart. And look, if it was Palworld, the Pterosaur would absolutely be holding an AK, but I don't think that detail is going to help
fought
Pocket
this guy.
Pal. So, let's talk about their response. Big Winston once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And, well, Pocket Pair are leveraging their biggest asset here, their community. And, look, like it or not, whether you think a big rat creature...
By the way, this guy's pals are fucking garbage. This guy's character sucks. Like, this guy sucks at the game. I don't know who's playing here, but they're garbage.
With an AK is an artistically cohesive thing or not. The truth is that Palworld happened in a world where most of my generation loved Pokemon as kids and then drifted away from the franchise over a continued lack of innovation and pretty damn scummy business practices that just about nobody else is able to get away with.
I think that the reason why I stopped playing why I stopped playing Pokemon is because they made too many Pokemon to keep up with. That's, I think, the main reason why I stopped. It was just too fucking many. Yeah, same formula for 20 years. I mean, it's just that there's too much to the game, and I felt like every game wasn't really that interesting. Like, Palworld was interesting because it brought in, like, new, unique dynamics. Yeah, there's no innovation. Exactly, yeah, And I think that Palworld probably will run into this problem in 5 or 10 years too. I think that games like this, it's like what I said kind of like with gacha games, where I think gacha games like just natively have their own lifespan. Like you can only bring in your first Dami-Mami character to a gacha game once, and then every other character is like, you know, Kafka, right, was like huge, and then for like Honkai Star Rail, but like Jade, which is kind of the same thing, at least like in terms of vibe, is not as big as Kafka, right? And so that's really kind of the difference, right? Or like the first character that's like Red or whatever.
In that context, Palworld captured attention, and it used extremely sticky and battle-tested game mechanics, base building, collecting, automation to hold on to people. That does mean the community actually likes them by and large. And so in this situation, they absolutely are David, and the rocks in their sling are the community. Let's talk about their statement. They start by reinforcing that they're small, how Palworld succeeded with the community, and they end with the real message. Quote, "It is truly unfortunate that we will be forced to allocate significant time to matters unrelated to game development due to this lawsuit. However, we will do our utmost for our fans and to ensure that indie developers are not hindered or discouraged from pursuing their creative ideas."
That's one of the big components here, is that if Nintendo is like upheld basically in being able to do this, it's basically telling every big company that the way that you want to make money is basically buying up all of the like conceptual real estate of video games, turning it into patents, and then making it to where you pull up the ladder from any other individual developer from being able to make a product that can compete with your product. That's effectively what happens. And it's bad for the end user.
And that's really the thing. This is just the beginning. This is a battle that will take years because it's legal and that's how it goes. Palworld, though, is not just a small indie company. That's where Sony actually entered the picture. So a few months back, Pocket Pair announced a joint venture with Sony Music Entertainment and an anime company called Aniplex. Basically, right, they want to do what rocketed Pokemon and got, you know, the Chin Pokemon episode of South Park. They want to exploit the Palworld IP outside of video games through anime, through music, probably a card game, and everything you could imagine. And that's what makes...
I think if they did Palworld with like the same type of like grotesque nature of like Chainsaw Man, I think it could be really good. But I think Palworld is like a vibe that's like really hard to nail. That would go so hard. Yeah, it would, right? Explain that deeper. I think that what I mean is that Palworld has like a... What makes Palworld very good is the juxtaposition of the inhumanity with the cutesiness. So you have like these little cute animals, but you also are cutting them in half and eating them, but they're happy while they're doing it. And so it's like you have to have both of these vibes at the same time and not have it turn into some like, you know, scene girl middle school vibe. It has to actually be good. I'm trying to think of like another show that I think kind of does a good job at that. Happy Tree Friends? Yeah. Like, what was the show? It was on, I think it was Cartoon Network. It was like Chicken and something. And it was like a really weird show. Dog and Chicken or something like that. Cow and Chicken. Yeah, Cow and Chicken would be a good example. You know, actually would be a really good example would be Courage the Cowardly Dog, right? But like it would have to be even farther than that. Because like you need a level of like grotesqueness that I don't think that even those shows had, because obviously they were like kids shows.
Me wonder here. Do Nintendo see this as a threat? It may not be a threat now, because I think Palworld is appealing to different people than just the core Pokemon experience as it is currently. But if you look at the likes of Arceus, you do actually see that, yeah, while Arceus was rightly
what
laughed...
What a piece of shit. Look at this.
That for its visual presentation, it actually did innovate the gameplay, and it was way better than any of the other modern Pokemon games for sure. So there may be thinking, well, we want to innovate and push Pokemon forward. Maybe Palworld is going to muscle in that turf. And they've also realized something. Palworld was scrappy. It was an indie. When you hear about the development, it does seem like a little bit of a technical shit show. But that's the thing. It will only get better and stronger from here. Yeah. And now it has got proper corporate backing with those joint venture agreements. So for Nintendo, if they see a rival brand to Pokemon, would they not rather kill it where it is now when it's small? And
well, of course that's what they're gonna do. And also it's now that Palworld has been successful, Nintendo stands to gain money from a settlement. Because if they shut down a really small studio, they're not gonna make any money from that shutdown. But because Palworld now is holding a bag, they can get that bag.
I want to be clear. Every game developer should be against this, and I know that within the industry, many think that Pocket Pair are, in a way, creative hacks who couldn't even bother making their own in-universe version of a gun. They just grabbed an AK or an AR from an asset store and slapped it onto a pocket monster.
Which they did.
But that doesn't actually matter now. That doesn't matter. What matters is this dangers us all, and it's something that's happened before. It is common understanding the game mechanics cannot be copyrighted. Exact implementation can be, but not in broad strokes. You can't go and patent the Metroidvania format. I mean, we used to call...
But they would try to. That's the problem. Is that this is the issue, is that that's what you're really fighting against. You're fighting against people that are going to effectively try to gather up. It's kind of like, here's a really good example, right? Is like in America, I don't know if like... Obviously, a lot of people watch that aren't just in the U.S. But in the U.S. here, we have like a really big problem with housing because like you have a lot of these like really big companies that are buying up housing in mass and then raising the prices on all of the houses. And so what's ending up happening is that now you have people that can't afford to buy a new home because almost all of the homes are being purchased by these like large real estate companies or even large investment companies that just look at real estate as a vehicle of investment. So what's going to end up happening is that games are going to go the same direction. Is you're going to see game companies that are trying to, now it's no longer about how to create a good experience. It's about how to not overstep on some sort of like other grounds that some company already owns. It's very bad. That's not happening to the degree you think. It's not true. It's much more limited than the media said. I think that you're probably right to an extent, but it's definitely an agitating factor, and it makes things harder to do for an average person. So yeah. I mean, like, it is happening. Now, the extent of it happening, it's a big problem. Like, I don't want to argue about how big of a problem it is or it isn't. All I want to say is that it could be a problem, and it's like a parallel. That's all.
It's now the FPS, a Doom clone. And yeah, if you're newer, you may not know that, but in the 90s, it wasn't necessarily FPS, it was Doom clones. But the idea of a first-person shooter is not something that id could go and copyright. But specific mechanics, well, those can be patented. And that's because copyright protects the usage of the things that you've designed or wrote, and patents are designed to protect mechanical inventions or
functionalities.
Processes. The whole point there being that if you actually make an innovation, the patent system protects your ability to exploit that, and in doing so, it creates a financial incentive for people to be innovative.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, if a patent is too broad, it can become impossible to reproduce.
And this is the problem, right? Is like you need to have patents to an extent, but the issue is that people clearly try to exploit the system by making a patent broad enough to where they can effectively stop other people from competing with them. And that's the issue. Yeah, he brings up Nemesis. Well, Nemesis is an example, but this happens inside of all industries. Like, patent trolling didn't get invented with video games. Like, it's not like, oh, video games invented patent trolling. No, it's been like this for a long time.
Without infringement. And that's where broad patents are a problem. And this hurts you. I would actually say it has hurt you. You just don't know it because we cannot see.
Very great argument. Extremely great argument is that there are a lot of patents and types of funding and innovation that we don't get to take advantage of because companies hold the patents on them and they're being used as a way to suppress innovation. Yep. Very good point.
The road not taken. The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of Mordor's Nemesis system was a true innovation, honestly.
Yeah.
It led to emergent gameplay within that game that actually saw people forgetting about the core progression and just having fun in the sandbox settling scores with orcs. It was fun, it was dynamic, and it was a relationship with our enemies in the game that was actually player-driven. But Warner Bros. Patented it. And thus far, nobody has got past that patent. And that means that one of the 2010's greatest innovations in gaming is locked within one of the worst publishers. So if you're a AAA game or a AA, you probably don't want the risk. What if you're an indie, though? Well, will a publisher pick you up and fund you, knowing that an American megacorp could just attack you? And even if you're a self-funded indie, well, what are the chances that you drop your trailer after working in secret for 2 years, your trailer catches on, and just before release, you get served with something by Warner Bros. And even worse, this chilling effect means that we're not seeing...
And you've got to keep in mind that even if you think that you can win the lawsuit, there are many cases where when you win, you still lose. Where the amount of money and time and just like mental, like just energy that you're spending on this, just everything, right? Like, let's assume you've got all the money in the world. You've got all the money in the world. Think about just like the mental stress that something like that creates. Free market is gone. Well, that's the problem. Is that patents are made so people can benefit from innovation, but they're also made so people can benefit from preventing other people's innovation. And like, I feel like you have to have them, but there are clearly some of these examples that are too overreaching and too overarching.
Next version of the Nemesis system, the next iteration or innovation along those lines. That's the thing. Nintendo is a bad actor here. They are,
yes.
In my opinion anyway, using overly generic patents, not as a true attack vector, but rather as a mind-controlling parasite. Because this doesn't seem to be about winning the legal case.
Of course not.
It seems more an excuse to pick up the legal system and to harness it to maul your opponent to death regardless of what a trial verdict may be, because as we just saw, well, they can pull you into a settlement that is amazingly favorable to them. Now, there is a story this week about development about who I think you could call villains in the industry. It's about Unity. The whole Unity drama finally came to a close, and if you want to learn more, learn how.
Yeah, they've had to walk back another one of their fees. Now, Unity's had to. Because, like, remember what I said before, that I thought that it would affect Unity in the long term? It has.
And see what happened. Click here next.
Yep. They completely walked it back. They did, but that's not enough. The problem is that with business-to-business relationships, you need a degree of trust that's several measures higher than the degree of trust that you have with the customer directly. And that's a big difference that a lot of people don't understand, is that when you do business-to-business transactions, you are operating under a completely different set of rules than if you're selling to a direct consumer. And this is a good and a bad thing for different reasons. Companies already took their decisions. Too late, Unity? Exactly, right? It's like, basically, if you're a company, and think about it like this, right? If you're a company, do you want to build a castle on sand? If you've already had one instance of Unity being shown to be manipulative or to take advantage of you, do you want to risk that happening 3 years down the road when you have your game that's out and now you're making money on it? No, of course not, right? Exactly. And so that's why it's bad. It's bad because people have to make a decision. They have to make 5-year plans. And if you're showing instability now, that 5-year plan can't involve you. Whereas if you're a consumer and the company is like, oh, this company made a bad game, you're out $60, maybe $70. Who cares? Like, compared to like a company having like a fee that's 10% of their revenue. It's insane. Do you think intellectual property laws and consumer laws will ever be changed to favor new businesses and creators? Do you think the market is doomed to ever be strong-armed by big companies like Nintendo? I do think that it's forever doomed. I don't think that it has to be, but I think that it does have to be. I'll explain what I mean. The problem is that the average person is too stupid to understand what this problem is conceptually. Because people are so miseducated and undereducated and just simply not educated that they're unable to process and understand abstract thinking just as a wholesale like problem. And because of that, it's very hard for you to communicate this problem to a person because people can only see, well, if you look at Anubis and then you say Lucario, well, they look like the same to me. Well, I bet Nintendo's right. Look at them. Look at them. And that's the way they work, including the judges. The problem is that the judges make decisions on existing laws. And you need to have the people that are voting to change those laws to hold different companies accountable so they can't use this legislatively to control people and stop innovation. Can you communicate this idea to the masses effectively? I think the answer is no. I think that the average person, because everybody can vote, the answer is no, you cannot communicate this idea. The people are, you know it, I know it, and everybody knows it. But governments usually favor companies. But the reason why they favor companies, what I'm saying is that, like, this whole issue, it all exists inside of the context of having a voter base that is stupid, uninformed, and confident about their misinformation. That's the reason why it's a problem. Yeah, I do a good job explaining it. Yeah, but the problem is that other people can do... I think that you really... A lot of people really... They downplay the strength of emotional messaging. And emotional messaging, like I've said this before, the best argument is not an argument. And I think that that's basically what I'm trying to say with this. It doesn't matter how good your argument is.